Hello, and welcome to Learning English. Are you ready to improve your language skills? Excellent. Let's dive into an engaging story to learn English together. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment to support the channel. Let's begin. For a considerable time, $1 trillion of Chinese capital was invested across various companies and businesses within the United States. This represented a massive sum of money, but China recently made a significant decision. They abruptly halted all of this investment from flowing into U.S. companies. This move came without any prior warning. Consequently, business leaders and corporate executives throughout the U.S. are now completely taken by surprise. They are scrambling to understand why this shift occurred so suddenly and why the stream of capital simply vanished. This isn't merely a minor adjustment in business policy. Many view it as a profound and unexpected financial shock. Some analysts have labeled it a financial attack. Due to its speed and the immense amount of money involved, this major shock could create tangible problems for many people in the U.S., potentially leading to job losses through layoffs. It also threatens personal savings plans, such as retirement funds. China provided its reasons for stopping the investment. They cited escalating risks in international relations. They also stated a desire to protect their capital and ensure their investments remained secure. This decision was formally enacted on a specific date, March 17, 2025. The directive was not immediately broadcast on the news. It was discovered later through the release of official government documents. Even before this sudden halt, the volume of Chinese investment in the U.S. had already diminished significantly. It had plummeted from a very high figure to nearly zero. Over the last several years, New Order effectively reduces that number to zero. Some observers believe this was a strategically planned action by China. They contend it was a method to apply intense financial pressure on the United States, without escalating to an open conflict or altercation. Therefore, this situation raises several crucial questions for everyone. First, what were the precise reasons for China's decision to cease all these investments into U.S. companies simultaneously? And what is China's true long-term objective? With this maneuver, what are their subsequent plans? This cessation of investment might only be the initial phase of a much larger financial development. 2. The Great Halt. On March 17, 2025, momentous change took place in the international flow of capital. The Chinese government made an unequivocal decision. It issued a regulation that prohibited Chinese firms from making any new investments in companies based in the United States. This represented a major and sudden stop to capital movement. This new regulation was not revealed in public press conferences or on television broadcasts. The information came to light in a quiet and unforeseen way. Specifics of this halt were found embedded within official documents that corporations are required to file with the government. Following the discovery of these documents, the Reuters news agency verified that the ban was authentic and active. Beijing, the seat of China's central government, offered two primary justifications for this action. First, they pointed to heightened risks in global politics. They termed this geopolitical risk. Second, they cited the necessity of keeping their funds and assets safe, using the phrase asset security concerns to articulate this, to grasp the true impact. We can examine the financial figures. In 2018, Chinese firms invested approximately $46 billion in U.S. businesses. Over the subsequent years, this figure declined substantially, immediately before this new regulation. The annual investment was down to about $2.3 billion. Now, with the comprehensive ban in place, the flow of new Chinese investment is virtually $0. A study from the Rhodium Group, which analyzes investment data, starkly illustrated this dramatic fall to nothing. Experts in global finance and politics, such as Professor Zha Dozhang from Peking University, clarified the significance of this move. They asserted it was a step that China had considered very carefully. It's not an impulsive decision born from anger or a single incident. Instead, China utilized this halt as a tool to exert significant pressure on the United States. Their goal was to directly affect the U.S. economy by cutting off this vital supply of money. Professor Zha indicated this was a calculated strategy to apply financial pressure without initiating a direct, overt conflict or military engagement. Between the nations, it demonstrated a strategic deployment of economic and financial leverage. The investment ban of March 2025 was more than an isolated action. It was a component of China's broader strategy. For years, China has been working to decrease its dependency on the United States economy. This is a long-term strategy to lessen financial interconnectedness. A critical step in this strategy involves selling U.S. government debt. China possesses vast holdings of these bonds, which function as loans to the U.S. government. However, they have been selling them off in large quantities. For instance, in 2024, China divested $14 billion of U.S. debt. This was the largest annual sell-off since 2016. Currently, China's total holdings of this debt stand at $775 billion, a significant reduction from previous levels. Selling these bonds helps China shift its capital away from the U.S. financial system, thereby reducing its exposure to American risk. Furthermore, Chinese state-owned banks have ceased certain transactions with U.S. banks that use American dollars. This change was prompted by new regulations from China's central bank, People's Bank of China. This reduces the necessity for U.S. dollars in some major international financial flows and encourages the use of alternative currencies. U.S. officials have clearly recognized this strategy. The U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo stated in January that China is reconfiguring its financial ties. She cautioned that this shift markedly diminishes the United States' influence or leverage over China. The conventional tools Washington employs, such as taxes on Chinese goods, tariffs, or export controls, are primarily trade-based. They are too slow and ill-suited to counter China's rapid financial maneuvers. Capital can move far more quickly than cargo ships. China is also forging stronger economic relationships with other nations, striking deals with countries like Saudi Arabia and various European nations. Some European companies are developing business practices that bypass regulations and the dollar-based system. This disparity in power and influence, this leverage gap is widening. Many experts believe it may soon become irreversible. China isn't merely withdrawing funds from the U.S., it's also reallocating that capital to different markets and constructing its own financial ecosystem. This makes China more resistant to U.S. pressure applied through traditional means. Thus, the investment ban was not just a standalone event. It was an unmistakable signal of this larger strategy. It demonstrates that China is strategically wielding its financial power. This plan is designed to gradually reshape the global financial system, rendering the United States less central and powerful. It is a deliberate, calculated action to pressure the U.S. without engaging in open conflict. 4. Others are leaving too. The problem extended beyond just China. It was indicative of a broader trend, affecting foreign investment in the U.S. The flow of money into the U.S. from other countries began to decrease significantly. This is known as foreign direct investment. In the last year, this type of investment fell by over 20%. For the beginning of this year, projections suggested a further drop of nearly 20%. This indicated that other nations, not only China, were also withdrawing their capital. There were distinct examples of this trend. A major sovereign wealth fund from Norway divested a substantial amount of U.S. technology stocks, selling off $7.1 billion worth. He cited uncertainty regarding corporate regulations in the U.S. as a reason, signaling growing apprehension. Japan also displayed diminished interest in U.S. investments. Japan's massive public pension fund also reduced its allocation to U.S. commercial real estate, withdrawing 30% of its investment from that sector. This occurred after a ratings agency, Moody's, downgraded the creditworthiness of several U.S. banks. The loss of investment from such a significant fund was a major blow. Additionally, U.S. corporations face a large amount of maturing debt that needs to be refinanced soon. This is referred to as corporate debt. By the end of 2026, companies must repay $4.1 trillion of this debt, a figure reported by S&P Global. Typically, international investors and funds purchase this type of debt, helping companies to easily roll over old debt and secure new financing. However, the appetite for U.S. corporate debt among foreign buyers is now shrinking. They are less confident about the future of U.S. companies and the broader economy. With fewer foreign investors purchasing this debt, U.S. firms are forced to source capital domestically. This frequently means they must pay higher borrowing costs than before, increasing expenses for businesses. These instances highlighted a crucial point. Global investors were feeling less certain about placing their capital in the U.S. market. Global trust in the U.S. market was being shaken. It wasn't solely China creating this issue. Other countries were also withdrawing their money or reducing their investments. This shifting landscape made it significantly more difficult for U.S. businesses to secure the capital needed for growth, or even to maintain their current operations smoothly. It was a clear indication that global confidence in the U.S. financial system was on the decline. 5. A difficult period for business. American companies began to feel the repercussions almost immediately. Securing funding became a major challenge. Previously, many businesses received capital from foreign investors who would purchase equity or provide loans. But now, that stream of foreign capital had dried up. Companies still required funds to operate, pay employees, and expand. With diminished foreign support, they were forced to seek capital from alternative sources. One method was to issue special types of loans known as bonds. However, due to the uncertain climate, these loans were considered risky. Consequently, companies had to offer exceptionally high interest rates to attract buyers. These high-yield loans are often referred to as junk bonds. In 2024, the issuance of these high-interest bonds by companies surged. The volume increased significantly, by about 38% compared to the previous year. The cost of borrowing this money also rose. On average, companies were paying around 9.6% interest, a rate much higher than in the past. Consider the case of Hartwell Tech, a Boston-based company that manufactured factory equipment. They were anticipating a substantial investment of $180 million from Chinese investors, but when the investment freeze took effect, this funding vanished overnight. Hartwell Tech urgently needed capital. They had to secure a special emergency loan from another firm, Apollo Global. This loan came with a steep interest rate of 11.3%. They were required to pledge their valuable intellectual property and assets as collateral. Experts who assess corporate financial health began issuing warnings. Rating agencies like Fitch stated that numerous mid-sized U.S. companies were at risk. Approximately 1 in 5 of these companies could face severe difficulties in finding capital or repaying their loans within the next 18 months. Companies are being compelled to accept financial deals that ensure immediate survival, even if they are detrimental in the long term. A fractured dream. America harbored a significant ambition to repatriate manufacturing jobs. It's an idea known as reshoring. The objective was to once again produce critical goods like computer chips and batteries within the United States. The government even provided incentives, such as tax credits, to companies willing to construct new factories or expand existing ones domestically. This was perceived as a strategy to bolster U.S. strength and reduce reliance on other nations for essential products. However, constructing these new factories and facilities is extremely expensive. Many of the projects planned under the reshoring initiative depended on investment from companies outside the U.S. They were counting on foreign capital to help finance the construction, machinery, and workforce. But over the last year, this foreign funding began to vanish. As previously mentioned, investment from China ceased entirely. Capital from other nations also became more difficult to obtain. This posed a major obstacle to the reshoring dream. Reports indicated that numerous companies planning to build in the U.S. are now facing financial shortfalls. They are unable to secure the funding they anticipated because their foreign partners have withdrawn. For instance, there were plans for a very large battery factory in Michigan. This project was valued at billions of dollars and was expected to create numerous jobs. There was also a proposal for a major robotics center in Nevada. Both of these projects required foreign capital. Due to the halt in foreign investment, these plans have been either postponed or canceled entirely. Even larger-scale projects encountered hurdles. A leading company, Intel, had planned a massive facility in Ohio for producing computer chips. This project was crucial for enhancing America's independence in chip manufacturing. Yet, even this significant project has experienced delays in its construction schedule due to funding challenges. Experts warned that, without alternative sources of financing, these vital projects may not materialize. They could remain mere concepts or small-scale efforts, instead of genuinely transforming American industry. The aspiration of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. was colliding with a harsh reality. There wasn't sufficient capital available to fund all the planned initiatives. The dream of Made in America was proving difficult to realize without the necessary financial backing. You bear the cost. The major shifts occurring in the distant world of finance and investment have a tangible impact on people's everyday lives. You can observe it during a trip to the store, as prices for many common goods are rising. This is linked to taxes or tariffs imposed on products imported from China. The scope of goods from China subject to these tariffs has expanded, now covering products valued at over $500 billion, up from $370 billion a few years ago. The average tax rate is now higher, approximately 22%. This translates to higher costs for the things you purchase. For example, consumer electronics, home appliances, and automotive parts are now more expensive. The price of home appliances has increased significantly, rising by over 16% in just 1 year. Even large retail chains are affected. Major retailers such as Walmart and Target have issued warnings that their profit margins are lower than anticipated. Citing these increased tariff costs as a primary factor, some economic research groups estimate that the average American family may need to spend nearly $2,000 more by the year's end due to these inflated prices. Companies are also encountering difficulties, with their profit growth slowing considerably. In the final quarter of a recent year, profits for large corporations grew at a very sluggish pace, much slower than before. Companies must choose between absorbing the extra costs or passing them on to consumers. However, with wages not increasing substantially and general price inflation remaining above 3.5%, if companies raise prices too aggressively, consumers might reduce their spending, which would in turn harm the businesses. The sense of uncertainty about the future is pervasive. Some studies indicate that this economic uncertainty in the U.S. has reached its highest level in over a decade, perceived as more volatile than during the 2008 financial crisis or the 2020 LOCKDOWNS. This heightened uncertainty stems from a combination of factors including changes in monetary policy, unclear government spending strategies, and rapid shifts in trade regulations. Corporate leaders also share this sense of unease. Their confidence in the future is low. Many report that the lack of clear government policies makes long-term planning difficult. Financial analysts suggest that companies are reducing new investments not just because of high costs, but also because of the pervasive confusion. Due to this unstable environment, investors are reallocating their capital. Substantial sum, over $120 billion. It's been withdrawn from U.S. stock market funds in just the last few months. This points to a larger issue. It is not merely a short-term difficulty. It appears to be a matter of long-term trust in the U.S. economy. A new world. The global landscape is shifting. It isn't just the U.S. economy that feels different. We're now witnessing a change in global power dynamics. Nations that were traditionally allies of the U.S. are also formulating new strategies. Germany, U.S. ally, has finalized a significant energy agreement with China. France, another ally, is now utilizing China's currency, the yuan, for some of its trade, meaning they are bypassing the U.S. dollar for these transactions. Capital from regions like Europe and Saudi Arabia is beginning to flow towards China. These nations perceive China as a more stable and predictable destination for their investments at present. Feeling that its regulations are clearer, China is actively working to establish its own financial ecosystem. It is simplifying the process for foreign companies to list their shares on Chinese stock exchanges, which helps them secure funding and expand within China. China is also strengthening its digital currency. The digital yuan can now be used for trade in 13 countries, allowing these nations to conduct commerce without relying on the US dollar. Experts believe the US investment freeze was just an initial step in a broader strategy. China aims to fortify its own markets. Simultaneously, it is gradually withdrawing capital from US markets. This is not a conflict fought with armies. It is a quiet realignment of global capital flows. The US dollar has long held the top position, but alternatives are emerging. What do you think would be the first change in your daily life if the US dollar were to lose its dominant status? If you learned something valuable today, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It takes only a moment, and it provides immense help in creating even better English learning videos for you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you.